JavaScript array methods in a few minutes or less. Alright devs, today we're going to be looking at includes. The includes method in JavaScript is used to check if an array contains or includes a specific value. Unlike most other array methods in JavaScript, say like map, filter, or for each, includes does not take a callback function. Simply just pass in the value that you want to check for and that's it. But devs, before we look at any code, here are 3 quick facts about includes. Number 1 is the return value. The includes method returns a Boolean value, so just true or false, based on whether the specified element is found in the array or not. So this makes it very convenient for conditional statements or for quickly checking the existence of an element or value in an array without the need for using any kind of complex loop. Number 2 is case-sensitive comparison. The includes method performs a strict case-sensitive comparison when checking for the presence of a value in an array. This means it will only return true if the element that's being searched for is an exact match. If you want to perform a case-insensitive search, you'll need to convert all of the elements to a common case. So for example, lowercase, before using the includes method. And lastly, number 3 is checking for nan, or not a number. Includes can be used to check if an array contains nan, or not a number. But it's important to note that it works differently than other comparison operators. So when using includes to check for a nan value, it does actually work correctly, unlike the triple equals operator sign, which doesn't directly compare nan values. So something to keep in mind. All right, devs, let's look at some code. Okay, so we have the array numbers here, which just equals an array of 5 items, numbers 1 to 5. But let's pretend we're in a production environment working with like a large database or something, and let's pretend that numbers has thousands of items in it. And you as the developer want to check to see if numbers contains a specific value. So what comes to mind here? One way of doing this would be to just take numbers, we could loop over it, for each takes that callback function, and then we could say for each, we'll just call it item. We'd want to do something like some conditional logic here. So we could say if our item is equal to, and the value we want to check for, so in this case, let's say the number 3, then do something. So for example, we could log something to the console. If that conditional statement is true, we could say it's true, else another console, something like no, it isn't there. And you can see what that gives us is a log for every item in that array. But if this array was like thousands of items long, we're gonna have a massive log. Plus, this is a lot of code. We're looping over each item in the array, we're logging something to the console for each of those items, and we're having to do a whole conditional check here with a full if-else statement. But there's a way better way to handle this, and that's of course with includes. So instead of doing all of this, we could just hit numbers with includes, pass in that value that we want to check for, which in this case is just the number 3. We could store this in a variable. We'll call it includes target. And then just log includes target to the console. And we get our true value down here in the console. So yes, the numbers array does include our value that we want to check for, which is the number 3. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Plus, this is a lot less code. Everything's on one line and it's really easy to understand. No loops, no conditional logic, none of that. And of course, if the value that we want to check for doesn't exist in the array, say like 6, we'll of course get a false statement down here in our console. So that was one quick example with includes. Let's look at another. All right, so in this example, we have an array of strings. We have fruits and just a handful of fruits here. We'll do this one a tiny bit differently, and let's create a variable that stores the value that we want to check. We'll just call it string to check, and that will equal the string of banana. And of course, like before, we have our array fruits here for reference. So we can take fruits, type that down here, and then we can hit fruits with that includes method. And what's the value that we want to check for? Well, we want to check if the string banana exists in fruits. So we can simply pass that to includes. And that's of course our string to check. And then we can take this guy and create reference to it and store it in a variable called, let's call it include string. And then let's just log include string to the console. And we get true, banana does exist in the fruits array. Now, storing our check in a variable and then passing that variable to the includes method may seem a little redundant, it may seem a little extra, but this is just looking at another way to do it. But what if the value we want to check for is banana with a capital B? We're of course going to get false, because remember, includes is strict and it is case sensitive. And since we're dealing with strings, we'll want to convert all of our strings to a common case before running our check so we can get the expected result that we want. So if your check is something like this, when we pass that guy in to run our check, all we have to do is simply hit this with something like to lowercase, which is a method, and that will convert anything that we check for to a common case, in this case lowercase, then run the check using includes. And then of course we'll get our true value here in the console. And like before, if this is something that is not in the array like mango, we'll get a false. And that about does it. Includes is super simple, super convenient if you need to check if a certain value or element exists in an array. It's way better than looping over an array or doing any kind of conditional logic. It's just way simpler and way faster. But devs, that does it for includes. If you got some value out of this, definitely click event that like button. If you're feeling chatty, feel free to leave a comment, and as always, if you want to support the channel, all you have to do is